today I'm going to be learning about Norway by watching the Geography Now for Norway. Now, I'm from Scotland, so Norway is a country I definitely feel a connection with. Geographically, Scotland and Norway are very close. We share the North Sea. We both drill for oil in the North Sea. But when it comes to things like landscape and the people, I think there's a lot of similarities. So I'm really looking forward to exploring that on this channel. The Geography Now is always interesting to get a good overview of a country. So that's why I'm starting with this. But if there's any other interesting videos or topics about Norway that you think I should watch, please recommend them in the comments. Now let's start with this.
Hey everyone, so I'm excited for this one. We recently did a geography in Oslo, Norway, and I had the honor to meet many of you guys, the Norwegian geography peeps, in your own country. It was amazing. Norway is a country everyone has kind of heard about, something about snow, ice, Vikings, skiing, I think trolls, but Norway is also a land of highly compounded history, tradition, postmodernism, and above all, landscape and people.
And black metal!
Yes, Keith is really excited for this episode.
It's time to learn geography now!
Hey everyone, I'm your host Barbs. We've done Denmark, Finland, Iceland, and now the fourth Nordic sister, Norway. Now in the Nordic countries, Norway would kind of be like the one that everyone either tries to call their best friend or date. She smiles at the ground, pulls her hair behind her ear, and looks up with those sky blue doe eyes that sparkle and says, "Welcome to Norway." Norway plays a huge role in what it means to be Northern European, and when you look at it on the map, you'll see that it's fascinating how well they've developed the civil infrastructure from a rugged half-frozen peninsula. Oh, and there's a town called Hell. First of all, the country, which kind of looks like the shape of a spoon, is located in Northern Europe in the region known as Scandinavia, just above the North Sea, bordering mostly Sweden to the east, Finland in the far north, and even a small sliver of Russia at the very end.
Yeah, what I want to know firstly is, what do Norwegians think of the other Northern European countries like Sweden, Finland, Denmark, and even Russia? Do you have any stereotypes of people from these countries? What's your relationship like with people of these countries or these countries in general?
Effectively means that Norway goes even further east than Finland and gets the entire Arctic coast from their neighbors, sharing the Barents Sea with Russia. Apart from that, Norway has some overseas territories as well, two of which are in the Arctic Circle, the Svalbard Archipelago with only about 3,000 people, mostly in the largest town Longyearbyen, and the uninhabited Jan Mayen Island, which was actually kind of traded with the UK for these islands and Canada in like 1930 when Canada was still British. Weird trade-off, but okay. After that, they have two dependent territories, the Antarctic areas of Peter I Island and Bouvet Island, way down south, neither of which are permanently inhabited, and they also claim a portion of Antarctica known as Queen Maud Land. Going back to the mainland though, the country is currently, as of 2019, divided into 17 counties, or fylker, plus...
Yeah, the one thing I want to know about geographically is people who live in this sort of northern area. Have you ever lived there? Do you know anybody that's lived there? How is life in these more remote parts of the country? It's a very unique place, being so northern on Earth. I can imagine the conditions are very difficult to live in. I guess people do live there.
It's the unincorporated area of Svalbard, which, by the way, holds the northernmost permanently inhabited settlement in the world, with a population around 40 in the winter and 120 in the summer. The thing is, in 2020, the country will merge some of these counties into 11 regions. Already, North and South Trondelag have merged, and the final result in 2020 will look like this. The country's largest city and capital is Oslo, located in the southeast, which also holds the largest airport, Oslo Lufthavn International, as well as Oslo shipping port, the busiest shipping port in the country. A skip to the west, you find the second largest city, Bergen, with of course the second largest airport, Bergen International. It is said that almost around 80% of the country lives within 10 kilometers of the ocean, and despite the rugged mountainous terrain, the nation has an extensive network of roads, bridges, and trains that cross virtually every region of the nation, including the Lærdal Tunnel, the world's longest road tunnel that stretches 24 kilometers long, cutting through a mountain, and also the famous Atlantic Road that hops from island to island in the Møre og Romsdal County. Now, what's really fascinating is that Norway kind of went from this to this, and for a nation that has never surpassed 5.5 million in population, it's pretty impressive. How did this happen though? Well, as the legend goes, in the 60s, Denmark was like,
"Hey Norway, you are just the best. I love you, man, and you know, just to prove it, I'm gonna give you all this ocean water stuff."
Wow, really?
Yeah, just take it.
Thanks.
Whoa, there's like a ton of oil here. Thanks, Denmark.
Actually, it was the Geneva Convention like 10 years prior to that, but that story's kind of boring. Now, as you can clearly tell, Norway has lots of access to the ocean. Due to all the serrated inlets and fjords, plus islands, they have the 7th largest coastline in the world. This also means that roads and bridges can only take you so far, and in order to get around in Norway's west coast, you'll see a lot, and I mean a lot, of ferries and ships. And what's cool is that, like some of their neighbors, Norway has a free roaming law, in which you can pretty much camp out anywhere in nature as long as it is not on private property. We all know.
Tell me if you've taken part in that. Do you go camping if you live in Norway? I've watched videos seeing the landscapes and the nature and the remote places around Norway. It looks absolutely beautiful, and I can only imagine camping would just be such a breathtaking experience. Do a lot of Norwegians go camping in these places? And yeah, tell me what you think about that decision to get all the oil. That's one thing I do know as well, is how prosperous Norway is and how they manage their oil and the money they make from that so well, even in comparison to somewhere like the UK. Again, I never really realised the population was so similar to Scotland. Even just Scotland versus Norway, which is like, they said, I think about 5.5 million people population. You can really see how well managed and controlled Norway is and how they deal with their oil.
Some towns in Norway are situated in the most picturesque locations. Some, like this town, have no direct sunlight for 6 months because of the mountains, so they built giant mirrors to illuminate them. Fun fact, Longyearbyen is known for being both the brightest and darkest place on Earth. Because of its location on the Arctic Circle, it gets 110 continuous days of no sunshine and 95 days of no night. Also, they have an emergency seed bank with over 1 million specimens built into the side of a mountain in case of the apocalypse and all plant life dies out on Earth. Also, technically, it's illegal to die in Svalbard. Because of the permafrost, bodies do not decompose, so you must either ship out your body or cremate it. Not sure how to segue out of that, but let's talk about cool places. Now, I asked some of you guys in Norwegian Geographies what some of the top places to visit in Norway are, and here are some of the suggestions you gave. Nordkapp, the Viking Ship Museum, Nidaros Cathedral, the Dock of Bergen, the King's Castle, Altes Igloo Hotel, Frogner Park, and Vigeland Sculpture Park. Try to find the one with the dude fighting the babies. This fortress, this Iron Age farm, the world's largest moose sculpture, this whaling museum, the Roald Amundsen and Edward Munch monuments and grave, the Kon-Tiki Museum, the Polaria Aquarium, the Ager Viking-style brewery, the Three Swords Monument, so many traditional stave churches, but this one is probably the most famous one. I mean, there's like 1 billion rocks named after body parts of trolls. There's that weird boulder jammed between 2 cliffs, a mountain with a hole in it so it looks like it got shot by a gun, so many ice caves, the world's strongest whirlpool, so many fjords like Geiranger Fjord, Nordfjord, Hardanger Fjord, Trollfjord, Harrison Fjord. They were even supposed to give Finland the peak of Mount Halti for their 100th birthday, but then it was kind of like,
Happy 100th birthday, Finland!
Thanks, Norway. So I heard that you're thinking of finally giving me the peak to my tallest mountain, right?
Oh yeah, sure, why not?
Awesome. Well, then let me have it.
Oh, see, there's this thing in my constitution called Article 1, which states that the Kingdom of Norway is indivisible, so here's a taco.
yeah, Norwegians actually really love tacos, which...
Really? But yeah, tell me more about that. As a Norwegian, where do you recommend tourists or people coming to your country visit? What's the most interesting place? Or even as a Norwegian, where do you like to visit most? Whether it's a building, museum, just a location in Norway, where's your favourite place? But what we can see from there is Norway really has everything. It has a lot of natural beauty with those fjords and mountains and things like that. But it also has a lot of great, interesting buildings, a lot of unique architecture from modern to traditional. Got everything really.
Which makes the perfect opportunity to transition into... Now, if you know anything about Norway's land, you'll know this one word. Fjords. Fjords, fjords. The word is even Norwegian. And it's interesting how it became that way. Basically, like many other areas in the north, the country is a post-glacial peninsula with over 50,000 islands that at one point was completely covered in ice. Over time, the ice melted, eroding the rock beneath, creating the incredibly indented coastline of steep, jagged cliffs and fjords. Of the coast, the largest and deepest fjord is Sognefjord, and it is the 3rd largest in the world, extending over 200 kilometers inland. This means that much of the country is divided into into regions of choppy fjord stuff to the west and the connected hilly and valley stuff to the south and southeast. Everything pretty much falls either within the alpine boreal climate or further up north, Arctic. Keep in mind that due to Svalbard and Jan Mayen, the Norwegian economic zone extends to the majority of the Norwegian Sea and much of the Barents, as well as the North Sea to the south. This is called the NCS, or Norwegian Continental Shelf. Here, the largest deposit of underwater oil is found that supplies Norway with much of its wealth. A skip to the east, you find the largest lake.
Just with regards to the fjords, do you have a favourite fjord? What's the most beautiful, most breathtaking fjord? Even just the ones they've showed already are stunning. I remember watching GeoWizard, another YouTuber, do a trip across Norway, seeing some beautiful fjords in there. But what's your favourite as a Norwegian?
Lake Mjøsa, which is just parallel to the longest river in the country, the Glomma, which drains all the way into the North Sea in the south and has a drainage basin that covers about 13% of the country's land. A little skip to the west, in the center you find the longest and most dominant mountain chain, the Scandinavian Mountains, where you can find the tallest peak, Galdhøpiggen, which is also the tallest in all of the Nordics. If we are discussing the overseas territories, then Svalbard is pretty much an Arctic archipelago of glaciers, this one being the largest in all of Europe, and the rest are mostly just cold valleys. Jan Mayen Island is the only place with an active volcano in Norway. The Berenberg Peak last erupted in 1980. Otherwise, if we skip all the way south to the Antarctic, Bouvet and Peter I Islands are dormant volcanic islands, Bouvet considered the most remote island in the world, and both of which are nearly completely covered in ice and only inhabited by seals and birds. Now, keep in mind about the oil thing though, although they export lots of it, gas is actually still super expensive. According to globalpetrolprices.com, as of 2019, it is just over 17.2 krone per liter, making it one of the most expensive places to get gas in the world.
I don't want to talk about it.
This is partially because in 1990, they initiated the Government Pension Fund Global. This is a national wealth fund run by the government to subsidize pensions when oil dependence runs dry. Now, Norway has lots of natural resources and clever ways of managing them, making them somewhat of a paragon for development few other nations can compare with.
Challenge accepted.
But for what it's worth, they have a unique system locked and loaded. And now it is time for my triple shot of espresso break. Usually this is the part where Noah comes in, but Noah is out of town. So let's give this to Keith.
Yeah, tell me what you think about how Norway manages its oil reserves and the sovereign fund. I feel really jealous being from Scotland, the fact we have that access, but of course it's managed by the UK government, and yeah, I just don't think it's managed as well as Norway does. Tell me what you think about that.
Now, everyone knows that Norway is quite a prosperous nation, but just how prosperous is it? Let's just put it this way. They export more than they import, and not just petroleum products. Fish alone makes up about 10% of their exports, and they are the highest exporter of salmon out of any other country in the world.
I just love Voss water. It's expensive and it's Norwegian, so you know it probably came from like a mystical glacier or something.
Yeah, I know. That's basically just our tap water. I wash my dishes with that stuff every day.
But it's expensive and Norwegian.
And you fell for it.
Ha! Y'all just got tricked.
Otherwise, the majority of the energy in Norway comes from hydroelectric power. Norway became one of the first countries to adopt a carbon tax back in 1991. Although cutting down trees is still done on a smaller scale, they were the first country to ban deforestation. They have Europe's largest herd of reindeer. They have lots of birds like puffins. Whales and orcas love swimming off the coast. In the Arctic, you can find polar bears and walruses. And now, food. Norwegian food is known for being either really nice, warm, and cozy, or straight up disgusting. They love their fish.
What on earth was that? That was some sort of animal head?
They love their fish. You have some interesting birds like, food. Norwegian food is known for being either really nice, warm, and cozy, or straight
That's quite frightening.
up disgusting. They love their fish. You have some interesting fish dishes like lutefisk and rockfisk. Some other dishes include things like various types of porridge, pickled herring, kumla, reindeer made in various ways, meatballs in brown sauce, krumkake, brown cheese, these Christmas dishes, and the national dish, fårikål. However, if you ask a Norwegian, they might tell you the new national dish of Norway is tacos. They might have some questionable ingredients on the table for you to add, like mayonnaise or cucumbers. And I mean, come on, Mexico, even you break your own rules all the time and mix things up in your own country. So let the Norwegians have their fun. And speaking of
Yeah, tell me more about Norwegian food. What's your favourite Norwegian food, whether traditional? Tell me if that is true. Is are tacos that popular in Norway? How did that come to be? What's your favourite filling on a taco in Norway?
Norwegians. Have fun.
Oh, and speaking of Norwegians having fun.
Oh, and speaking of Norwegians having fun.
Thank you, Keith. Norwegians have a saying, they are born with skis. The word even comes from the ancient Norse word skith, which means split wood. If there was any kind of apex cold winter type of people on Earth, Norwegians would take the gold. And they literally do take the gold. Like, they have more Winter Olympics gold medals than any other country. First of all, the country has about 5.3 million people, and as of 2018 has the highest human development index out of any country in the world. At about 84%, the country is made up primarily of people that identify as ethnically Norwegian, including about 60,000 indigenous Sami people. About 8.3% of the population is other European descent, mostly Western Europe, and the remaining population is made up of other people groups from outside of Europe, from various regions of Africa, Asia, mostly from countries like Pakistan, Somalia, Morocco, Iraq, and Kurdish people. They use the Norwegian krone as their currency, they use the types C and F plug outlets, and they drive on the right side of the road. Interesting to note that they are not part of the EU, but part of the European Economic Area and Free Trade Association. In fact, Norway is a kingdom, currently under the headship of King Harald V. However, his role is mostly representative and ceremonial. His executive powers are limited, and most government is ruled by the parliament. Essentially though, although some would argue Vikings kind of started in Denmark, it really kicked off in Norway. Norwegian Vikings did kind of all the exploring and colonizing and raiding and killing, you know, Viking stuff. And no, they did not wear helmets with horns. Language-wise, Norway actually has two official languages, Norwegian and Sami, the language of the minority northern indigenous peoples that have lived in the frigid regions for millennia. The Norwegian...
Yeah, tell me more about the Sami people. I remember watching, there's like a Christmas movie on Netflix, and it featured some Sami character, and it was really quite interesting. A unique part of culture in Northern Europe, in Norway. And yeah, so far everything is seemingly like very interesting. I'm really learning a lot from this documentary. Tell me what you're thinking about this so far.
The language, however, is kind of confusing though, because it kind of has two different writing systems that everybody must learn in school, Nynorsk and Bokmål. What exactly are they? Well, it kind of goes like this.
Hey, we've been in a union with the Danish for centuries and now they are gone. We can speak our own language freely.
Woohoo! But we've been writing our language in the Danish style for so long. I mean, what do? Do we change it?
Hi, I'm Ivo Olsen, and I say yes. I'm going to listen to all the dialects of Norwegian and come up with a weird fusion thing that can work for everyone. I'll call it Nynorsk. We can teach it in schools and everyone can be free of Danish influence. And today, the Danish-style Bokmål is still used by about 85% of the population. Weird side note, the word ha can mean almost anything in Norway. For example, ha. Ha? Ha. Ha. Speaking of which, like many of their other neighbors, Norwegians have 13 years of school, graduating at age 19. And when Norwegians are just about ready to take their final exams, they go on a 3-week party called Russ. And just look it up. Norway has lots of different dialects. Here are some of you guys, the Norwegian geographers, explaining.
På standardnorsk ville jeg sagt hvordan, men I Ålesundsområdet ville jeg sagt hvordan.
Hey, my name is Talina. In standard Norwegian, you might say våres, but in Egersund area, you say okkas.
In the west, you could say Gysene og Løyedal, and in the north, maybe hvor artig.
In Oslo, you would say something along the lines of det ikke lett, skjønner du. Trøndelag County, det ikke lett sjø.
So in standard Norwegian, you would say søppel, but in Bergen, we say boss.
Thank you.
Yeah, tell me, Norwegian language is something I'll definitely do more research and learn more about as well. Tell me if there's any unique quirks of the Norwegian language, or tell me if there's any dialects within Norway that you can't understand or are more difficult to understand than any others.
Otherwise, there are so many other things you guys, the Norwegian geography peeps, wanted us to talk about in terms of your culture, and here is Random Hannah with culture stuff.
Norway is a land loaded with tradition and folklore. Many of you have already heard of things like trolls and elves, but there's also scary beings like the Huldra, Nattmara, and the Nuken. Pretty much all Norwegians are outdoorsy people. Hiking and cross-country skiing are national pastimes, hands down. Almost everyone owns some kind of Mari sweater, made of wool with traditional patterns knitted onto the upper parts, usually in the national colors of red, white, and blue.
Quite nice,
Many
actually.
Norwegians own small cabins in the woods, and they actually like to brag about how bad their cabins can be. As in how technologically disconnected they are, with the least amenities. No Wi-Fi, no electricity, no plumbing. You're hardcore.
That actually sounds super fun and super nice. I know that's popular in Finland as well, that people have these cottages that they can go to get away from the hustle and bustle of normal life. Tell me if you have one of those cottages, how often would you go? How lacking in technology is it?
Speaking of bragging, in Norway it's considered super cool to come back from vacation and show off your tan, because it's kind of hard to get a tan in Norway. The Nobel Peace Prize is also awarded in Oslo every year. In Norway, everyone's income and wealth is on public record, mostly. But for what it's worth, the nation does this to help prevent tax evasion. And finally, we cannot skip the bunads. These are traditional costumes of Norway that come in so many different varieties based on the region and town you are from. They are mostly worn for special occasions, especially for May 17th, the country's national day, where they march to the castle in Oslo.
Yeah. Alright, get out of here. I want to talk about music. Traditionally, Norwegians have their own regional folk music and dances called bugdedans. Traditional instruments include things like dulcimers, goat horn, willow flute. The traditional folk music eventually found a way to fuse with one of the most popular genres of Norway today, metal, or specifically Norwegian folk metal bands. Not only that, but black metal was started supposedly in Norway, and it has since been a domineering genre many people have been playing for decades. That's it for me.
Why is metal music so popular in Northern Europe? I know, again, that similar with Finland. Where did that trend or that interest come from?
Keith. Anyway, we gotta move on. History.
And who's your favorite Norwegian metal band or just music artist?
In the quickest way I can put it, Viking Age. This dude unites Norway into one kingdom. Vikings invade and take over a ton of other places like England. Christianity, Old Kingdom, Black Plague, Union of Kalmar, Denmark takes over, Lutheranism, Sweden takes over, Constitution established, first wave of immigrants to America, they finally leave Sweden, World War I, neutral, women's suffrage, World War II, neutral again, but Germany doesn't care, joins NATO and European Free Trade Association, oil boom, they vote and reject EU membership, host the Winter Olympics in Lillehammer, largest underwater gas pipeline in the world opened, Oslo grows and more immigrants come in, and here we are today. I asked you Norwegian geography peeps for some notable people from Norway or of Norwegian descent, and here are some of the ones you suggested we put in this video. Eric the Red, so many past Vikings and kings, blah blah blah. Edvard Grieg, Edvard Munch, these riders, these cross-country skiers, Roald Amundsen, Magnus Carlsen, Max Magnus, Thor Heyerdahl, Fridtjof Nansen, so many musicians like these people, as well as actors like these people, and of course the royal family. Seriously though, did you guys watch the movie Kon-Tiki?
Yeah, tell me what you think about having a royal family as well. Obviously, being from the UK, we have the monarchy, King Charles now, but there's a lot of people who are quite against it. I think a growing number of people are against the monarchy and don't want that for whatever reason. I'm more pro-monarchy. Tell me, in Norway, is it similar? Is there an issue with people not supporting the monarchy? A lot of people who are not proud of it, or are most people proud of it? And recommend some moments in Norway's history that I should react to or learn about, and also tell me some interesting people to learn about from Norway as well.
It's pretty good. I mean, his migration theory was still kind of mostly wrong, but hey, you did a cool thing, man. And that's the thing about Norwegians. They're so globally intrepid. They reach out to the far corners. And with that, they've also made a lot of friends. Which brings us to... Now, Norwegians are known for being very level-headed and nice, but they do know who they support and stand by no matter what. First of all, Switzerland is kind of like their weird alternate parallel universe twin that shares a lot in common with them. They both are not part of the EU, they both are very financially stable, yet expensive to live in. They both have mountains and snow, and they both have similar values in general affairs. They get along pretty well and enjoy sharing the ski stories. The UK is a very close friend, especially Scotland due to their shared Viking history. They even give them a Christmas tree every year to say thanks for helping in World War II when their king and government were taken in from exile as the Germans tried to invade.
Okay, I never knew that the connection was that strong. I do remember hearing about this story about the Christmas tree, but really cool to hear we're friends.
Nepal has close ties. As another mountain nation, they've taken much interest and send much aid to their programs. High-profile politicians have visited in the past, like their Minister of Environmental Development, Erik Solheim, and the Prime Minister of Nepal visited Norway as well. For the USA, they have a very close connection, not only in diplomacy, government, and business, but specifically to the diaspora living in the USA, and specifically the state of Minnesota. Nearly 1 million Norwegian Americans live in this one state alone. The USA holds more people of Norwegian heritage than any other country outside of Norway, with almost as many as there are in Norway. They even have a game show called Alt for Norge, in which Norwegian Americans see the homeland of their ancestors. They cry and act way too dramatic, which is entertaining. The winner gets to meet their Norwegian relatives, and the losers get a book telling them information, but they don't get to meet their relatives, which is kind of messed up. up, but it's a game show. What do you expect? Anyway, when it comes to their best friends, pretty much what I've heard is a mix between all the Nordics, but specifically Iceland, Denmark, and Sweden. Iceland is like their party friend they love to go on adventures with. They're also kind of like the preserved Norse nation that their ancestors colonized, which holds a dear spot in their hearts. Today, they have a defense agreement that allows the Norwegian Air Force to survey and patrol the Icelandic airspace as well. Denmark and Norway, however, are always kind of fighting for Norway's affection. Both these nations in the past have fought each other and ruled over Norway under separate kingdoms. All three countries were at one point part of the Kalmar Union. They can relatively understand each other when they talk. Swedish is closer to Norwegian though. They are all part of NATO, the Council of Europe, and many people from each of these nations end up marrying and having families together. In conclusion, Norway's prosperity doesn't stop with their will for gritty cold adventure. They've scaled the South Pole, the icebergs, the glaciers, and the tundras. It's almost as if the ice keeps them warm. Stay tuned. Oman is coming up next.
Interesting. So great way to learn about Norway there. Just hearing about the relationships with other countries at the end there was quite interesting as well. So tell me what you think about that. Tell me anything interesting from that video about Norway, and tell me anything interesting about Norway that was not in this video as well. And as I mentioned, recommend as much videos as you can, whether it's about history, important people in Norway's history, culture, food, music, whatever. Tell me in the comments. I'll check them out soon. Thanks.